Þakka þér fyrir Gunnar og það sem að ég sá það í gær og í morgun að þú ert einstaklega fær á hjólinu þannig að við ætlum að færa þér hérna dagleiðir í hring á hjóli á Vestfjörðum.
Á Vestfjörðum?
Já, gangið er bara vel næsta sumar. Akkurat.
Takk fyrir.
Ágætu fundargestir, verið velkomin í Garðabæ. Ánægilegt að hafa ykkur hérna öll í dag. En ég ætla að vera fundarstjóri hérna fram að hádegi og þá tekur Pavel við. Það er þétt dagskrá, það eru 8 erindi fyrir hádegi og þannig að við þurfum að halda vel á spöðunum. Ég mun vera með bara ágætlega mikla tímastjórnun á klukkunni hérna. Og svo vil ég líka taka fram að það er hérna 2 útlendingar sem eru náttúrulega kannski heiðurs fyrirlesarar. Hann Andreas, hann situr hérna á kantinum og mun þýða fyrir þá. Þannig að þegar þið heyrið eitthvað svona smá suð þá er það hann að koma til skila erindum sem verða flutt hérna í dag. En fyrsta erindi í dag, það er frá honum Hans Voerknecht, hann er hollenskur og hann hefur árabil leitt þróun lausna fyrir hjólandi vegfarendur í Hollandi með ráðgjöf og stefnumótun undir hatti hollenska hjólasendiráðsins. Og hann er líka mjög vel að sér í raunverulegum kostnaði samfélagsins að því sem í daglegu tali kallast frí bílastæði. Og hann talar að sjálfsögðu fyrir eflingu hjóla og almenningssamgangna. Erindið heitir Dutch Vision on Cycle-Centered Mobility that can be used everywhere. Hans, welcome.
Thank you very much to have me here in Iceland. Yesterday I cycled a little bit around and I was really impressed with the amount of cycle infrastructure that you're already having. The only thing is wayfinding is still quite a problem because there are no signs and I lost my way several times, and also the weather could be a little bit better, but I never had a talk when I was so wet as I'm now, so because I cycled here. A little bit about myself. I was from 2007 to 2010 the first international ambassador on cycling policy for the Netherlands. Why was that? Everywhere in the world they thought we need more cycling for a better society, for more sustainability. And when they had this first thought, the second thought is where do we find it? And they thought in the Netherlands because, well, also to my mind, Netherlands is the cycling paradise in the world, and it's so common. And there's one short story I will tell you. We had a Velocity conference, and there was a meeting of mayors, and we had to find a mayor who was willing to talking there. And then we talked to the mayor of Nijmegen, a 150,000 inhabitant city in the Netherlands, and he said, but what am I going to tell these people about cycling? I don't tell them that I take a shower every day. Cycle, it's just something you do every day. You just go out of your house and you take the bike. And he didn't realize that it was quite uncommon elsewhere. Well, I was one of the founding fathers of the Dutch Cycling Embassy. This a little bit about the Dutch Cycling Embassy, because we thought, we could also export our knowledge on cycling to all other countries. And now that's happening quite a bit of times, because in the beginning I went everywhere and they came to us and I told them stories, but then I thought, well, but what's next? And now there is a lot of consultancy, of workshops going out everywhere in the world to help people to introduce the Dutch model of cycling elsewhere. So I'm not on this photograph, but the king is. This is our king. And the king is cycling also very much. Also his children, when they go to school, they cycle to school, and they have some guards around because, well, you know, these days. And our motto is cycling for everyone. And this is the map of where we've already been, and Iceland is not yet on it. So this is the first visit of a Dutch cycling promoter to Iceland. So this is the first meeting in Iceland. First I'm going to tell you a little bit about cycling in the Netherlands and the importance that cycling has and could get in your country. Today, cycling infrastructure is the norm in the Netherlands. Whenever you devise a new plan, the first thing that people ask, how is cycle accessibility? There is 35,000 kilometers of dedicated bicycle lanes and 675, and it's growing fast, of what you call cycle highways or fast cycle paths. And well, there is another network of bicycle facility, but it hasn't been that ideal always. In the beginning of the century, there were cities because the intake of cars in the Netherlands was a little bit after the Second World War, and before that there were cities where 80% of all trips were made by bike. But then it dropped very fast, and when you see other towns like Antwerp and Basel and like that, they didn't recover from the fall of bicycle use. And in the midst of the 70s, they said the policy was, oh, get rid of all this bicycle infrastructure and of those bikes. They're in the way of cars. But then there was an action group, Stop the Kindermoord, or Stop Child Murder, because they saw there were so many children killed in accidents on bikes by cars that there was a national transport strategy where the bike was considered as a equal mode of transport to public transport or the motor car. And since then, safety have become bicycling have become 5 times as safe as it was way then. Not because of helmets, because nobody in the Netherlands wears a helmet on normal biking, but by making cycle infrastructure safe. And that was mainly by unmingling cars with bikes, so separate bike lanes. And when cars, because sometimes streets are so calm, you can have bikes and cars together, but then the maximum speed of cars is reduced to maximum 30 kilometers an hour, and sometimes even 15. So these are some examples. This is in the middle of Amsterdam, the Museum Square, where it has been changing, but also in Amsterdam, this is the Sarvatistraat, where, well, you can see it has been changing. This is also in Amsterdam. You see cars have been replaced, and you can see it almost everywhere where cars have been replaced by bikes, especially within the cities. And of course, also everywhere, when you do that, when you take away cars, the shop owners, everybody is screaming out loud, oh, we're going to be bankrupt, and so on and so on. But the pain is in the change. Because if you ask people now, shop owners even, do you want to have the cars back? They were saying, are you crazy? No! We got much better business because we have an easy street, people can access us very easily. No, we don't want to have the car back. So when somebody, and you can say that, well, that's the Netherlands, the same happens in Portland. Mia Burke, who is a consultant, the first bicycle consultant in Portland, Oregon, they had parking spaces replaced for cars, replaced by 12 parking spaces for bicycles. And first the shop owners were saying, oh, what are you doing? But then she told them, this is just one client, and probably it's not for your shop, but 5 shops down where this parked car is. And so they introduced to having these bicycle places, and after a year, shop owners called the municipality, called the city of Portland and said, hey, can we have also bicycle parking, because we can have 12 clients instead of 1. So that's much better for us. So it's everywhere that it's working, that you replace cars with bikes, and this is an example in Oslo, Norway. And of course this has an enormous effect in air quality, but also in noise, of course, because we don't realize it, but in Amsterdam more than 36% of the people having really heavy damage because of traffic noise. And when you replace these parks by bikes, then this will reduce. Some numbers and figures. Well, the Netherlands is the only country in the world with more bikes than people. My family, we are with 5 at home. We only got 7 bikes, so that's not too much. I know families who are with 4 who have 12 bikes, but they have a lot of racing bikes and so on, and mountain bikes. But normally people have, for instance, a sport bike and a city bike, so they use a sport bike. When they go on recreational bicycling, and they got a cheaper bike when they go into the city. And 84% of the Dutch people own at least 1 bicycle. Well, there are some developments now. There is a national cycling agenda, and on this national cycling agenda, and that's also a difference from other countries, in most countries promoting cycling is a left-wing political thing, and right-wing politicians say, oh no, you should improve car. In the Netherlands it's not the case. Whatever party you've got, and I've been working for a provincial government, and there was a change from a left wing to right wing, and the right winger even was stronger on promoting bicycling, because he said the most important thing is people like cycling. They just like it. It's so much more convenient to go by bike into doing shopping than doing it by car. So my voters, they like it. Well, what's more is e-bikes, and nowadays the number of speed pedelecs is growing very fast. Cargo bikes, there are a growing number of fast cycling groups, and new to this is that companies need to work to promote having their employees cycling to work. It's not a voluntary thing. It started voluntarily. A group of 40 companies with more than 300,000 employees, the largest banks, the largest insurance companies, the national railways, but also companies like Siemens and so on, they join together and they say, we want to have sustainable, environmental friendly transport. What can we do? And they asked us, then I was working for them, what the most effective measures were. And then, now the effect is that all companies are obliged to prevent car use, to prevent car use to work as much as possible, so to promote other modes of transport. And some of the measures are, there is already a non-taxed fee of 90 kilometers when employees bike to work. So that is something that you can pay to your employee. There are tax advantages for providing speed pedelecs and e-bikes to employees. And most of the times they can pay the extra costs of this more expensive e-bikes and speed pedelecs by investing the money that they cycle every day into the purchase of this speed pedelec. Free parking is taxed. So you can't say it was tax-free, but now it's taxed. When you have a company and you say, okay, I have a parking space and I provide it to my employees, that will be taxed. It's not really true. It will be taxed. And the effect of paid parking for employees is so large. In Toulouse, they just said, okay, how much does the company pay for parking for their employees? And then they said, okay, we'll have that money paid by the employees themselves, because why should the employer pay for it? And the effect was that bike sharing in Toulouse, the bike share rose from 1% to 33%, because paying every day €8, or what is it, 1,000 krona, I think. Well, people per day, they stop with it very, very fast. And the excess thing is a mobility budget. How does a mobility budget work? You say to everybody, you get so much money for travel to work. And if you need more than that, okay, you have to pay it yourself. So, and you have to pay for everything, your car, your parking. And if you spend less money than that, you can keep it. So if people say, okay, but cycling is very cheap, then they have more money that they can use than they have. And there is what they call a carbon diet competition. Between companies, there is a competition on what company has the least carbon effect on the society, and companies, they really are proud when they are doing very well on this carbon diet. But it all should start with children. 50% of primary school and 75% of secondary school students go to school by bike. And you could say, primary school only 50%? Yeah, but most of them go walking. They live so close in the neighborhood of their schools, they go walking, whereas on secondary schools, they often, most of the time, a little bit farther away. My children cycle 17 kilometers to school every day on the secondary school. And one of the biggest things, nicest thing you can do in the Netherlands as a father is running around after your kid to learn them cycling, and then the first, wow, I can do it myself, Daddy, I can do it. That's one of the things that really, that you'll never forget, and most of you will also. And they learn traffic rules for cycling in the primary schools. And the bike for youngsters is their key to freedom. I think this is the amount of the cycle distance daily amongst age groups, and you see amongst the youngsters, it's more than 5 kilometers, almost 6. Every youngster in the Netherlands every day cycles almost 6 kilometers. And why is that? Well, you can see there are no school buses, so they cycle to school anywhere. But it's their key to freedom. They don't need a public transport ticket or whatever. They can go to their friends, to the hockey club, to wherever, on their bike. And the second thing is, you see, people keep cycling until the age of 75. And after that, it drops because, well, people get physical handicaps. This has been rising the last few years a bit because of the introduction of the e-bike, because elderly people now can have their e-bike, so they don't have to make so much effort. Going back, you see, in the Netherlands there are almost no school buses. And some of people, secondary children, go to school by public transport, hardly anybody by car. And these are typical pictures. This is a picture taken by my son. This is the cycle stand in the of his school, and this is another school. So people just normally cycle to school. And there is one thing, and I've talked to Cecilia about it, and she said, well, I've given up on fighting against helmets, and maybe I'm a Don Quixote, but what you see is helmets, and especially compulsory helmet laws, are killing for cycling. And that is because of these children. When you want your children on bikes, especially from 12 to 18, I don't know how it is, but everywhere in the world, they just refuse it. And they are so important because then they become very good cyclists. The bike is almost a part of the body. But I asked my son, Stephen, suppose you had to wear a helmet when you would be cycling on school, what would you do? Oh, he said no. No way. Because girls won't wear it because it spoils their looks. Boys won't wear it because it's not cool to wear a helmet. And they try to devise a cool helmet. And the thing is, what is the effect in practice on countries where there is a compulsory helmet law, like in Australia, like in New Zealand, like in some parts of the US? The only visible effect is that the use of the bike drops dramatically. In Australia and New Zealand it dropped by 30%. And safety, the number of severe head injuries per billion cycled kilometer didn't drop. So the effect in practice of helmets is, well, at least not visible. And what? Okay, there was another. I hoped I had some flip over, but the reason for it, and I want to go to it, because one thing is, I talked about it with the head of the bicycle department of the city of Copenhagen, and he said, well, the problem with helmets is, and the problem with all those talking about cycling safety, is that people get the impression that cycling is unsafe. And he said, when I'm talking to the people, I just don't talk about the elephant. I only talk about how great cycling is. And when you give people a helmet, they get the impression that cycling is unsafe. And the thing is, it's like what Daniel Kahneman already said, the Nobel Prize winner, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow. We tend to exaggerate the risk of very, very, very improbable things enormously, because the chance that you got a severe head injury is very, very, very small amongst when you are cycling slowly, like normal cycling. In the Netherlands, race bikers, they wear a helmet. And there's also, I want to pose it a little bit further. They done all kind of clinical tests, going to the hospital and asking and looking, hey, people with a helmet, do they have as much head injuries as people without a helmet? And then it's been shown that people with a helmet had less head injuries. But the thing is, these are in the Netherlands race bikers. And the problem is, race bikers are much more likely to go in hospital when they fall, not because they fall on their head, but because they fall on their hands and knees, and they get broken because they cycle 35 kilometers an hour. Whereas you had made the same fall on a normal bike, you just brush it away, and you go on. So you won't get to hospital. And when you correct for this effect, all these race bikers who wear a helmet but who are in hospital, who didn't fall on their head in the first place, then it's shown by someone of the Cyclist Federation in the Netherlands that there is no significant effect of helmet use on preventing head injuries. There is no significant effect on preventing severe head injuries of helmets. And the people who are interested in it, it's a rather complicated measure, but that's important. Then I have a film here. How do I get to this film? Yeah, but how do I click here? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Should it? Oh, we get an advertisement first, sorry. Hopefully it works.
Try another thing.
Okay.
Loka þig. Ég er búin að þig.
Já, ok, það er búin að. Er þetta?
Yeah. Well, I won't show you all this film, but what you see, this is taken in Utrecht. Nobody, really nobody, is wearing a bicycle, a helmet. And I think when you want to have a more cycle-centered bicycle culture, this is the same street in 1966. Where do you want to be? And this is now. And you see there are a lot more people, a lot more clients walking here, cycling here. So you can understand why this is so much better for the shops than having all these people by cars. Well, going back to my presentation. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But why cycling? Well, one of them is, of course, the zero emission vehicle is already invented some 1.5 centuries ago. So, but it's also a much more human-like way of transport than cars. We spoil our cities by using machines that can kill, that have a large negative impact on our health, on the way, the livability of the streets. And cycling is beneficial for the economy. Riding a bicycle costs less, and the benefits of society are very big. That's good for our planet, and cycling leads to a healthier life. There's been research done that when you have a medium intense effort every day, physical effort every day, that the number of years that you are in good physical health increases by 5 to 7 years. And this can be easily done by bicycling. Just 2 times 20 minutes is enough to keep you in shape. Cycling prevents serious diseases. Well, you can see the figures: heart diseases, cancer, and premature death. And you know maybe all those pictures. A car burns money and makes you fat, and a bike burns fat and saves you money. So that's also you can see here by cycling. And cycling increases happiness. I already told you cycling offers freedoms to children, and cycling improves quality of life. And you can always see that in practice, even when it's not so good weather. I was with a delegation of CEOs in the Netherlands. It was November. It was snowing, sleet a little bit. And we were cycling from the station to their plants. And we were cycling, and one of the CEOs said, "My God, in this weather, I wouldn't have thought of cycling to work. But it makes me feel so much better when I'm now on a bike, feeling the elements, even feeling cold is so much better to me. I get so much fresher when I arrive at my work than I would have been in the car all the time." So that's important. This is from a national research institute. Emotions associated with transportations, and you can see that the bicycle is by most people associated by joy and not by negative emotion. But cycling cities are also pleasant cities. Cycling creates public space. Well, you've already seen the picture. It's the easiest mean of transportation, and cycling saves you time. It's important, we've done a research that in the city limits, cycle is the fastest way of transport. You can say, faster than the car. Yes, faster than the car. Because, well, I rode with a bus, but it's the same as a car, yesterday from Glenmoor to here. And the most of the time the bus was standing still and all the cars were standing still. And when you're on a bike, I think I could have the competition. Well, cycling encourages social participation, but the question is, how can you plan your city for cycling? Well, of course, there has to be a joint network of hardware, software, and organization. Software is like the cycle map that you've made, but also the planning. When I go to Google Maps here in Iceland, I don't get a bicycle route. I get a walking route, I get a public transport route, and I get a car route, but I don't get a bicycle route. When you're in the Netherlands, so make Google Maps have also the bicycle route in their planning. The bicycle map that you made is a great thing, but it's much more easier that someone talks to you and saying, turn to the right here. And the orgware is very important, that you all work together, and not only within governmental bodies, but also with the companies. Make the companies aware and that they can do a lot on sustainability when promoting cycling. So in the Netherlands, they put the bicycle first. That's what I call the cycle-centered bicycle. But how can the infrastructure be cycling inclusive? Well, facilitate cyclists from door to door. These are some pictures. These also. And here you got a picture of what we call a fietsstraat, where the car is a guest. So the cars has to, when there's a bike, they have to stay behind the bike, because normally the bike is just a very narrow space, but here it can only be when there are not so many cars, when it's just cars going to their home, they can do that. What I made a picture, but I forgot to include it. One thing that can be easily done is replace the place of the bike with that of parked cars. Normally, and you see that everywhere, you got the sidewalk, parked cars, and then a bike lane. But that feels very unsafe. When you put the bike lane between the parked cars and the sidewalk, then the cyclists will feel quite safe. Well, fortunately here on Iceland you've got lots of places to make separate bike paths, but when you go downtown, it's not so. To me, it doesn't feel so safe. And of course, as a cyclist, you're allowed to take the sidewalk when you're cycling. In Netherlands, that's not allowed, never. But well, it's not so nice for the walkers. And when you take away a little space of the cars, and of course then you have a very good place for the cycles. And of course the cars would say, hey, come on, but then we can't go on fast enough. But when you make your calculations, the effect will be neglectable, because the speed, the average speed of the car isn't decided by how much lanes you have on the straights, but how many cars, the capacity on the cross points, because that's the calculating effect. Well, what's a problem is bicycle and public transport. You don't have trains in Iceland. I heard there are maybe initiatives to make a train connection with Keflavik, but bus rapid transport in combination with bikes, so that the bus doesn't stop at every corner, but just takes a fast route, a dedicated fast route, and you go to the bus stop by your bike, can be made in Iceland. And it proves to be a very strong combination. this is the accessibility of inhabitants by bike and public transport in Groningen and Assen. And you see here that on the short distances, 0 to 15 minutes and 15 to 30 minutes, that the bike alone is competitive to the public transport. But on a larger distance, the public transport has, the combination has a large additional value. So, and that's already done in a lot of places. The bus, they just stop every 2.5 kilometers, and there people go there by bike, and they stop in the bus, and the bus goes on with great speed and great accuracy. But how about accessibility? Because in the Netherlands, like a lot of places, cities aim at bike and public transport dominate in the Netherlands, dominant mobility system, rather than a car dominant system. But then the car-minded people always say, yeah, but then we won't be accessible. Well, this is something that's done everywhere in the Netherlands. People take a route by bike, by car, and by public transport. And here you see by bike it takes 9 minutes, by car 18 minutes, and by public transport 22 minutes. So within cities the bike is the fastest way of movement. But then we thought, okay, let's see what is the effect of accessibility of investments in cars opposed to investments on bikes and public transport. And you see, this is the actual situation. This will be the situation in 2030 because the use of car, they predict, will increase. And this is the effect of investments in car infrastructure. And you see, this effect is hardly visible and is not be able to repair the effect in a place called Assen. You see that the bike already has much more impact, but the combination, you can have a better accessibility than by car. And what you also see, investing in cars, in car infrastructure, has no impact on accessibility. Why is that? It's what we call the waterbed effect. You have one bottleneck, for instance a roundabout or a crossing or whatever, and you devise something that makes this bottleneck go away. But then, one crossing further down, the same effect will take place, or there will be even a larger effect. And what we did is look to the whole system. What is the effect on the whole system? And then you see, okay, maybe you can gain some seconds on one bottleneck, but then it replaces to the next place. And the only thing that would be effective is, well, to make a complete system investment, that would be so very expensive and also much less effective than investing on bike and public transport. So, cities around the world are switching from motorized to non-motorized for active mobility, and I see that Iceland is also doing it. Because walking and cycling are the natural ways of moving, and, well, you can read it all, but you have to work together, and I hope that you will also engage in the Don Quixotery of trying to get the helmets away. And don't think that you yesterday I made this bike ride, and a lot of people thought, well, I have to give the good example. I should wear a helmet. And I think you give the wrong example. You give the idea that cycling is unsafe and cycling is friendly, makes you happy. And of course, there are always possibilities that something bad happens, but these chances are not bigger than anything anywhere else. Even I saw statistics that people saying it would be more effective if car drivers wore an integral helmet when driving their car. That would be much more effective than putting helmets on cyclists. And then we say, well, this idiot, why should car drivers wear integral helmets? Because it prevents head injury. Sometimes car drivers make a crash and get their heads injured much more often than cyclists are. But we think that's insane. But why don't we think it's insane to have children and adults wearing helmets? At least in the Netherlands we think it's insane. Not for race biking, because then you can drop by 35 kilometers an hour. And we all know that the impact of speed is quadratic to the impact is quadratic to the speed. Dus then you got much larger impact. But when you're cycling so slowly, one thing is you got much more time to prevent falling on your head because you go slowly and you have time to put your arms before it. And maybe you hurt your arm, but that can be repaired. We all know that head injuries a lot of times can't be repaired. So that's why we say in the Netherlands, when you really want to promote cycling, promoting helmets or making them compulsory is killing. So I hope you would also engage in this Don Quixotery. Well, this is the last picture. This is Amsterdam, and well, try to find your bike back. Thank you.